I am a ghost messenger. Most people know my kind is Grim Reapers. That day, I was sitting inside an operating room, impatiently watching the surgeon. "Hurry up and wrap this up," I muttered. "I want to finish my shift and go home." The doctor suddenly glanced in my direction with a blank expression, making me instinctively type a tiny question mark. Are doctors these days becoming stubborn enough to notice ghosts? My job is simple. I guide the souls of the dead into the underworld. I've been doing it for 99 years without a single mistake. Every soul has its name listed in my roster, and once their time comes, I escort them peacefully. It was routine work, until one woman completely turned my career upside down. A month earlier, I had been standing outside an operating room beside a grieving family. One man was kneeling on the floor, desperately bowing and praying for a miracle. I simply watched in silence. Begging was meaningless. Fate couldn't be changed, and once someone's time arrived, even hope couldn't save them. At last, the operating room doors opened. I stood up, ready to collect the patient's soul. But instead of a spirit walking out, the surgeon calmly removed her mask and announced the operation was successful. Her voice was cold, and exhaustion filled her eyes. Those simple words made no sense to me. Confused, I quickly checked my soul roster. The patient whose soul I had come to collect had completely vanished from the list. In 99 years as a ghost messenger, nothing like this had ever happened. It was as if destiny itself had rewritten the rules. I stared directly at the doctor, unable to hide my shock. "You actually saved someone who belonged to the king of hell?" I couldn't believe what I was seeing. For a brief moment, it almost felt like she looked straight at me before silently walking away without changing her expression. That single surgery became the beginning of my nightmare. More and more names started disappearing from my roster before I could collect them. Every missing soul had one thing in common. They had all been saved by the very same doctor. My frustration quickly turned into desperation. This was supposed to be my final year as a ghost messenger. If I completed my assignments without failure, I would finally earn the chance to reincarnate. But this woman had unknowingly become the biggest obstacle standing between me and my new life. I searched everywhere for information about her. Eventually, my colleague Xiao Ji managed to uncover her identity. Her name is Jiang Ling. Among ghosts, she's earned a terrifying nickname, the Ghost Killer. The moment I heard that title, everything finally made sense. Every ghost messenger assigned to Gen People's Hospital was suffering because of her. Thanks to the countless lives she had saved, many ghosts were forced to delay their reincarnation by 2 or even 3 extra years. I froze after hearing the truth. Waiting several more years was something I absolutely refused to accept. There had to be another solution. Maybe I could secretly interfere during one of her surgeries and discover the mysterious trick she used to keep stealing souls from death itself. Unfortunately, there was one major problem. Doctors are surrounded by a sacred aura because they dedicate their lives to saving others. Demons, monsters, and even ghosts cannot easily approach them. For creatures like us, they are almost untouchable. Still, sitting around and accepting defeat wasn't an option. I made my mind. The next time Jiang Ling entered an operating room, I would sneak inside and witness everything with my own eyes. I needed to uncover the secret behind her impossible surgeries. That opportunity came sooner than I expected. A 19-year-old young man suffering from a fatal heart disease was lying unconscious on the operating table. According to my roster, his death was already confirmed. His soul belonged to me. I slowly walked around the patient with my hands folded behind my back. Age meant nothing on the road to the Yellow Springs. I had escorted children even younger than him without hesitation. At that moment, I felt no sympathy. I only cared about proving that this surgery couldn't possibly change fate. Then the operating room doors opened once again. Jiang Ling walked in wearing her surgical gown. Even I had to admit she looked unbelievably beautiful. Of course, I knew she couldn't see me. Or at least, that's what I believed. The moment I leaned closer and whispered, "Dr. Jiang Ling, I'm counting on you today. Hurry up and let me clock out early." Something strange happened. Maybe it was just my imagination, but her hand suddenly froze for a split second. Her brows tightened as if she had actually heard me. A nurse stepped forward and asked, "Dr. Jiang Ling, shall we begin?" She gave a slight nod, and I couldn't hide my excitement. Come on, hurry up. One mistake is all I need to claim this soul. But then, out of nowhere, Jiang Ling coldly said, "Shut up." Both the nurses and I turned toward her in confusion. The nurse blinked and nervously replied, "Doctor, I didn't say anything." Jiang Ling calmly answered, "Not you." Then she slowly lifted her eyes and looked directly at me. "Get out." I instinctively looked around to make sure she wasn't talking to someone else, but there was no doubt anymore. She was staring straight into my eyes. She can actually see me? I was so shocked that I didn't even realize when I had already backed out of the operating room. Just like Xiao Ji had warned me, doctors who dedicate their lives to saving others accumulate immense virtue. Ghost messengers aren't allowed to interfere with them. Once I was forced outside the operating room, I couldn't step back in again, no matter what. All I could do was sit outside, cross my legs, and pray the surgery would fail. As I waited, something felt strangely off. Normally, operating rooms were packed with crying family members, but this time there wasn't a single person outside. No tears, no panic, just complete silence. The surgery dragged on for hours. I waited so long that I actually fell asleep. I had no idea how much time had passed before the operating room doors finally opened. I quickly leaned forward, stretching my neck, waiting for the patient's soul to float out. But nothing happened. Not a single soul appeared. Once again, Jiang Ling had defeated death itself. I didn't know what shocked me more, that she could see me or that she had rescued someone whose soul had already stepped through the gates of hell. After that surgery, Jiang Ling handled more than a dozen critical cases one after another. By the end, she looked completely exhausted. Without saying another word, she simply turned around and walked away, leaving me standing there speechless. There was no way I could let her leave. I hurried after her. "Since when could you see me? Do you even know what I am?" She ignored every question, entered a nearby room, and slammed the door shut right in my face. I stood there silently for a few seconds before touching my chest where my heart had stopped beating long ago. "You almost gave me a heart attack," I muttered. Then I smirked and casually walked straight through the door. "Bet you didn't expect that. I can pass through walls." The moment I stepped inside, I instantly regretted it. Jiang Ling was changing her clothes. No, 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 I shouldn't be looking. I quickly covered my face with both hands, except there was a tiny gap between my fingers and my eyes were shamelessly peeking through it. Without the slightest embarrassment, Jiang Ling calmly removed her surgical gown, took off her mask and cap, and tossed them into the trash. Then she looked straight at me and asked, "So, what exactly are you planning to do?" At that moment, I realized this might actually work in my favor. If Jiang Ling could see ghosts, convincing her would be much easier. I could simply ask her to stop saving the people whose souls were assigned to me. Once I completed my final assignments, I'd finally earn my long-awaited reincarnation. And if talking didn't work, well, I had other methods. After all, I was a noble ghost officer. I could spin my neck 360 degrees, appear out of nowhere, and scare ordinary humans half to death. Surely she wouldn't be able to stay calm forever. Trying to boost my own confidence, I secretly followed Jiang Ling all the way to her apartment. The moment she stepped inside, she suddenly turned around. I was about to greet her with a confident smile when she coldly said, "Take off your shoes." I froze on the spot.
Is this woman crazy? I'm a ghost. My feet don't even touch the ground while walking. I was about to argue, but the instant our eyes met, her icy glare completely crushed my courage. Without saying another word, I quietly took my shoes off. Her apartment was surprisingly spacious and spotless. I had entered countless homes to collect souls, but for the first time, I awkwardly felt like an invited guest instead of a reaper. I obediently sat on the sofa, waiting for our negotiation to begin. But Jiangling completely ignored my existence. She changed into comfortable clothes, took a shower, and calmly went straight to bed as if I wasn't even there. At that moment, only one thought crossed my mind. This woman has absolutely no respect for ghosts.
I grumbled as I floated straight through her bedroom door. Jiangling was lying quietly on her bed, eyes closed. I leaned over and asked, "Do you even know who I am?" Without opening her eyes, she lazily replied, "Mm-hmm." That casual response instantly irritated me. So she knows, and she's still treating me like I'm nothing. Fine, if words wouldn't impress her, I'd show her my signature ghost trick. I slowly twisted my stiff neck, preparing for a dramatic 360-degree rotation. Before I could even begin, a hand suddenly grabbed my neck. I froze. Jiangling hadn't even opened her eyes completely as she coldly muttered, "If you have something to say, wait until I wake up. Can you stay quiet for once?" Her calm voice carried an unmistakable threat. I nodded frantically, begging her to let go. Instead, she tightened her grip, pulled me onto the bed, and pinned me beside her like I was a stuffed toy. I didn't even dare breathe too loudly. Curled into a tiny ball, I stayed perfectly still until her breathing became slow and steady. Only after she finally fell asleep did I carefully slip away. But my mind was in complete chaos. Jiangling couldn't just see ghosts, she could actually touch them. Xiao Ji once told me that humans capable of seeing ghosts were incredibly rare. They either possessed yin-yang eyes, or they were people standing at death's doorstep. So what exactly was Jiangling? She didn't wake up until night had completely fallen. Meanwhile, I had made myself comfortable in the living room, sitting cross-legged, cracking sunflower seeds while watching television. The moment she walked out, I excitedly waved at her. "You're awake! I even bought these sunflower seeds specially from the underworld. Give them a try." She ignored me completely and walked toward the television. A horror movie was playing, filled with elegant vampires dressed in stylish suits. I clicked my tongue. Look at them. Even foreign vampires have fashionable outfits. Meanwhile, we're still stuck wearing these outdated black robes. I glanced down at my own uniform with visible disappointment. Jiangling gave me a strange look before calmly pouring herself a glass of water. Finally, she asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Why did you follow me here?" I immediately stood up and introduced myself properly. "I'm a ghost messenger. This entire area's sole guiding duties belong to me." The young man you operated on today had already reached the end of his lifespan. His soul was assigned to me. I carefully watched her expression, expecting surprise or guilt. Instead, she remained completely calm, as if she'd already known everything. "You saved someone whose fate had already been determined. You're an incredible doctor, but there's an old saying, life and death are determined by fate, while wealth and honor decided by heaven. Isn't saving someone whose time had already come the same as challenging destiny itself?" Jiangling silently placed her cup on the table before looking directly into my eyes. "I'm not a ghost messenger. Your responsibilities are yours. Mine are mine. Wouldn't it be better if we both simply did our own jobs without interfering with each other?" Her argument actually made sense, yet something still felt wrong. She switched off the television and calmly added, "If we're done talking, you should leave. Humans and ghosts walk different paths. I can't keep you here forever." Frowning, I turned and walked toward the door, but halfway there, I suddenly stopped. "Wait a second." I spun around and protested, That's not fair. You're already interfering with my work. How can you call this staying out of each other's business? Jiang Ling raised an eyebrow and motioned me to come closer. The moment I stepped in front of her, she looked me straight in the eyes and asked with a perfectly serious expression, "Has it ever occurred to you that maybe you're just bad at your job? If you're allowed to question my profession, then I'm allowed to question yours." The words hit harder than any weapon. For the first time in 99 years, a ghost messenger had been completely roasted by a human doctor. I opened my mouth to argue back, but in the end, I couldn't come up with a single convincing reply. I had no success stories to prove I was a capable ghost messenger. Frustrated and embarrassed, I turned around and left. That woman was unbelievably irritating. People always say, know yourself and know your enemy, and you'll never lose. So after leaving her apartment, I returned to the underworld and searched Jiang Ling's personal records in our system. To my surprise, nothing came up. I searched again, still nothing. It was as if she had never existed. I immediately called Xiaoji over. She checked the database twice herself before slowly shaking her head. Someone whose records don't exist doesn't have an ordinary background, she said. My advice, stay away from her. I never wanted to provoke Jiang Ling in the first place, but now she was ruining my entire career. There was only one major hospital within my jurisdiction, and ever since she arrived, the mortality rate had been cut almost in half. If this continued, I wouldn't finish my quota this year, and without completing my quota, there would be no reincarnation. Xiaoji tried to comfort me. Even if you're delayed by a couple of years, it's not the end of the world. You've already worked for 100 years. When the time comes, we'll reincarnate together. Maybe we'll even become neighbors in our next lives. I shook my head without hesitation. I can't wait another 2 years. My answer confused her. Why are you in such a hurry to be reborn? After a long silence, I quietly admitted, because I made a promise to reincarnate exactly 100 years later. Xiaoji couldn't help laughing. That's impossible. Before we became ghost messengers, we all drank Mengpo soup. No one remembers their previous life. That promise is probably just a dream. I lowered my eyes and whispered, maybe, but I know someone's waiting for me. I don't remember who they are. I only remember one thing. The promise was exactly 100 years, not even 1 day late. A few days later, another name appeared in the Book of Life and Death. It was the same 19-year-old boy Jiang Ling had saved before. This time, the problem wasn't her medical skill. The truth was much crueler. The boy himself had completely given up on living. Even immortals couldn't save someone who had already abandoned all hope. I arrived at the hospital early and quietly waited beside his bed. My plan was simple. The moment his remaining lifespan reached 0, I would immediately collect his soul before anyone could interfere. Near the doorway, 2 nurses were chatting. The boy in bed 12 probably won't survive, one sighed. Both of his parents are gone. He has no reason left to live. The other nurse lowered her voice. Dr. Jiang Ling even paid for his heart surgery herself. She covered every medical expense. If he dies now, won't all that money be wasted? Their conversation caught my attention. Jiang Ling personally paid for his treatment. I stared at the unconscious young man for a long time, trying to understand why she would go that far for someone she barely knew. No matter how hard I thought, I couldn't find the answer. But that wasn't my concern. I glanced at the invisible countdown. Only 10 minutes remained. I'd waited too long for this chance to let it slip away again. Desperate, I wrapped both my arms tightly around her, refusing to let go. Life and death are decided by heaven, I shouted. How can an ordinary human keep challenging fate? Fate already gave this boy another chance, but he threw it away himself. If he doesn't want to live, why are you still fighting for him? Before I could finish, Jiang Ling suddenly grabbed my face and kissed me. The move was so unbelievably sudden that my mind went completely blank. My body froze. My grip loosened instantly, as if all the strength had drained from my arms. For the first time in 100 years, the Grim Reaper himself had been completely stunned. Jiangling walked straight into the emergency room, leaving only one sentence echoing in my ears. If it's someone I want to save, even if they've already reached the halls of the King of Hell, I'll drag them back. I no longer had a heart, and the place where it once beat had been empty for a century. Yet somehow, at those words, that hollow space suddenly ached. The surgery lasted even longer than the previous one. When the doors finally opened, the one who walked out wasn't Jiang Ling, it was the young man's soul. I froze. Did she finally fail? I should have celebrated. I should have walked in, laughed at her, and told her that no doctor could defeat fate forever. But something felt wrong. The young man looked around confused, just like every soul that left the human world. Yet, unlike the others, he wasn't afraid. He didn't cry, scream, or regret anything. Instead, he looked directly at me and smiled. "You seem strangely familiar." Before I could answer, he tilted his head and frowned. "Don't you think we kind of look alike?" His words left me speechless. I had no idea what I looked like. Ghosts couldn't even see their own reflections. Through his transparent body, my eyes drifted back toward the operating room. Inside, Jiang Ling's face had turned pale. She was still desperately trying to revive his body, refusing to give up. "He's already dead, so why are you still fighting?" The emptiness inside my chest twisted painfully as forgotten memories suddenly flashed through my mind. For a brief instant, I saw myself lying on a hospital bed. Someone was desperately trying to save me with the same madness burning in their eyes. Then I heard those exact same words once again. "Even if you reach the halls of the King of Hell, I'll bring you back." I slowly turned toward the young man's soul. "Go back, live well, and don't disappoint the people who still want you alive." With a gentle wave of my hand, I pushed his soul back into his body, instead of escorting it to the underworld. I left the hospital before the surgery even ended. Of course, my superiors eventually found out what I'd done. Not only was I publicly criticized as an example to every ghost messenger, but an entire month's worth of my performance was deducted as punishment. My already impossible quota became even harder to complete. The more I thought about everything, the more frustrated I became. Jiang Ling had stolen my performance, gotten me punished, and because of that ridiculous kiss, she'd even stolen my very first kiss after 100 years. The more I replayed it in my head, the more restless I became. That very night, I went to Jiang Ling's apartment, determined to negotiate with her once and for all. Strangely, she wasn't in her bedroom. As I floated around searching, I heard movement coming from the bathroom. For a split second, I hesitated. "No, don't open the door. I'm blind, completely blind. I see nothing." I tried convincing myself, but before I could leave, the bathroom door suddenly opened. Fortunately, Jiang Ling was already wearing a gray bathrobe. She looked at me, raised an eyebrow, and casually asked, "Do ghosts blush too?" "Of course not," I immediately shot back. "You completely made that up." The more time I spent around her, the stranger she became. At the hospital, she was cold, calm, and terrifying. But at home, she had an unexpectedly playful side that could drive anyone crazy. It almost felt like she had two completely different personalities. I cleared my throat and decided to put on my most dignified ghost messenger aura. "I'm here to discuss something important," I announced. Jiang Ling simply raised an eyebrow and waited for me to continue. "You keep stealing my souls every single day. What exactly are you trying to accomplish?" She slowly stretched out an amused, "Oh," before smirking. "So, after all that, you've actually come here to ask me for help." She lightly tapped her knee and looked at me with a teasing smile. "If you're asking for a favor, at least look like someone who's asking properly. Maybe, if you're polite enough, I'll save 2 fewer patients." "You think I'm joking?" I slammed my hand onto the coffee table. "I'm a ghost officer. If I really wanted to, I could take your soul too." To make myself look intimidating, I even twisted my neck dramatically. Jiang Ling didn't react at all, not even a flinch. My terrifying ghost act had completely failed.
Left with no dignity, I slowly clasped my hands together and bowed my head. "Please, big sister," I begged, "leave at least a few people for me. You're not even an Avenger, so why do you keep making my life miserable? Do you seriously enjoy bullying ghosts?" The moment those words left my mouth, Jiang Ling burst into laughter. Two faint dimples appeared on her cheeks as she smiled warmly. Then she looked straight at me and quietly said, "100 years have passed, yet you can still bend, stretch, sweet-talk, and beg exactly the same way." For the first time, it sounded like she knew me long before either of us could remember.
I stared at her in disbelief. Have we met before? If Jiang Ling really knew me, then everything I believed about my past was wrong. I'd spent 100 years as a ghost messenger, guiding tens of thousands of souls. I was certain I'd never seen this woman before. But what if she knew me from my life before death? If she had been my friend back then, that didn't make any sense either. I'd already been a ghost messenger for a century, which meant she would have to be over 100 years old as well. Yet she looked no older than a young woman in her 20s. Jiang Ling slowly stood up and asked, "Why did you let him go?" My heartless chest suddenly tightened. "Who?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Su Han." My eyes widened. How did she know I released his soul? As if she had read my thoughts, she smiled faintly. "I'm a doctor. Who would know better than me whether a surgery truly succeeded or failed?" I stood there speechless while she casually walked to the refrigerator, grabbed a can of cola, and took a sip. "I heard you've worked flawlessly for 99 years. Not once have you ever let a soul escape. So, did you break your perfect record because of me?" "Of course not," I shouted immediately. "Don't flatter yourself." I wanted to say I'd simply felt sorry for Su Han, but ghost messengers weren't supposed to have sympathy. Even I couldn't explain why I'd made that choice. Jiang Ling smiled again, but this time there was something hidden behind it, an emotion I couldn't understand. Then she looked at me and quietly said, "I need your help." I raised an eyebrow. "Help? You've been treating me like your personal servant all day. Why would I help you?" "If you agree, I promise I won't interfere with your work anymore." My ears instantly twitched. That was exactly what I wanted to hear. "Fine," I replied. "What do you need?" "I want Su Han to stay alive." Her request completely confused me. "What are you talking about? He's already alive." Jiang Ling slowly shook her head. "No, the surgery failed. His body survived, but his will to live didn't. Even if you hadn't pulled out his soul, he'd only become a living corpse, a body without a true soul." I frowned. "Then I'll just take his soul properly. If he doesn't want to live, he can't escape the underworld forever." But Jiang Ling simply shook her head again without explaining. "I don't understand. I'm only responsible for guiding souls. If you want him to live, then save him yourself." She looked straight into my eyes before saying something that completely shattered my understanding of the world. "I want Su Han's name erased from the Book of Life and Death." I froze. Removing a name from the Book of Life and Death meant something impossible. A soul whose name disappeared would no longer belong to either the living world or the underworld. It would exist completely outside the control of fate itself. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Every soul is tied to a name. No one can escape the laws of life and death." Jiang Ling didn't argue. Instead, she calmly revealed the rest of her plan. "If I exchange my own life for Su Han, then he'll only need one heart." She gently touched her chest. "I'll donate my heart to him. You can take my soul instead. Since my name doesn't exist in the Book of Life and Death, no one will ever know." "You're insane." The anger inside me exploded before I even realized it. Logically, Jiang Ling dying should have been the best possible outcome for me. The sooner she disappeared, the sooner my performance would recover.
but hearing her calmly offer her own life for someone else filled me with an anger I couldn't explain. "Who exactly is Su Han?" I demanded. "Why are you willing to sacrifice everything for him?" She answered with the same calm expression, "Because that's what a doctor does. Only you can help me." I clenched my fists so tightly that they trembled. "I can't." I turned around and walked out into the streets. Wandering ghosts floated nearby, but the moment they saw the furious look on my face, they immediately fled in terror. They probably thought I was about to drag them straight to the underworld. Yet none of that mattered. What I couldn't understand was Jiang Ling herself. How could someone willingly walk towards death just to save a stranger? Did she really see her own life as something so disposable? Lost in those thoughts, I wandered without realizing where I was going. When I finally came to my senses, I was already standing inside Su Han's hospital room. The ward was completely silent. Years of heart disease had left him incredibly frail. His body was so thin that it looked like a strong breeze could break him. I slowly touched my own face. Do we really look alike? After 100 years, I'd long forgotten what my human face had looked like. I pulled up a chair beside his bed and quietly asked the unconscious young man, "Why don't you want to live? Isn't living a wonderful thing? If life wasn't worth living, then why do so many people struggle so desperately just to survive?" I lowered my head with a bitter smile. Even I'm willing to give up everything just for the chance to live again.
No one answered me. Suhan's breathing had become so faint that it was almost impossible to notice. A person who has no desire to live slowly loses not only their strength, but also their soul. Watching him lying there, I quietly whispered, "What do you think? Do you still want to live?" The ward door slowly opened behind me. I didn't even have to look back. I already knew Jiang Ling had arrived. Turning my head, I sighed, "You're even more stubborn than a ghost." She let out a soft chuckle and walked toward the window, clasping her hands behind her back. Moonlight bathed her figure, making her usually cold eyes appear unexpectedly warm. After a long silence, she quietly said, "I've lived for more than 100 years. My pupils instantly shrank. I had expected many secrets, but never something like this." She calmly continued, "I've spent over a century saving countless lives as a doctor." Her expression remained peaceful, yet there was a deep sadness hidden beneath it. But despite everything, I couldn't save the person I loved. I stayed silent, waiting for the rest of her story. Jiang Ling slowly looked up at the moon and began speaking about her past. "I was born during a time of war. Enemy soldiers held guns to my head and forced me to operate on their wounded. I stopped fearing death a long time ago," she whispered. "But one day, they killed my husband." Her voice trembled ever so slightly. "They ripped his heart out right in front of me." The room fell into complete silence. After a long pause, she quietly added, "I've searched for him for 100 years. Then she turned toward me. "And now that I've finally found him, tell me, shouldn't I save him?" A strange discomfort spread through the hollow space where my heart should have been. Ghosts don't have hearts, so I shouldn't have been able to feel pain. Yet somehow, something inside me still ached. I shook my head. "You think Su Han is your husband?" She silently nodded. "That's impossible," I replied immediately. "You've mistaken someone else for him." After a brief silence, I revealed a secret I'd never shared before. Ghost messengers don't have hearts. I lowered my eyes, and a ghost without a heart can never reincarnate. My words hung in the air. Jiang Ling gave a bitter smile before quietly saying, "Then you're just like me." She looked straight into my eyes. "Even if you complete your mission after 100 years,
you'll never be reborn. So why are you still trying so hard? I answered without hesitation, because I want to live. Even if I knew it was impossible, I still wanted to fight for that tiny chance. Jiang Ling's voice became soft and gentle. Living like this isn't so bad. She smiled faintly. You could stay with me in the underworld forever. For some reason, the emptiness in my chest stirred once again. If reincarnation truly wasn't possible, then spending eternity beside Jiang Ling didn't sound nearly as terrible as it once had. I refused to admit what that feeling meant. Maybe it was just because she was prettier than Xiao Ji, or maybe I was simply fooling myself. Meanwhile, Su Han remained unconscious on the hospital bed. He had no idea that someone was willing to throw away her own life just to save his. As a ghost, I wasn't supposed to understand human emotions, but this entire situation felt unbearably tragic. There was something heroic about Jiang Ling's determination. At the same time, I felt an emotion I couldn't recognize. It wasn't anger, it wasn't sadness. I convinced myself it was nothing more than a ghost envying humans. Quietly, I watched Jiang Ling playing with a bottle of sleeping pills. She had already begun preparing for her own death. Her suicide wasn't driven by despair. It was simply another step in her plan to save Su Han. I couldn't understand her at all. Even if Su Han really is your husband, what's the point of bringing him back? You won't be able to stay beside him anyway. I looked directly at her. Just let him go and come with me instead. I forced a smile. A ghost husband doesn't sound so bad. Jiang Ling looked at me for a moment before asking softly, "You don't want me to die?" Her question caught me completely off guard. "If I die," she continued, "you'll be the one taking my soul. That'll count towards your performance." I immediately shook my head. A fake achievement like that, I'd rather not have it. Before I could finish speaking, Jiang Ling suddenly reached out and grabbed my wrist. With one gentle pull, she dragged me onto the bed until we were lying side by side. I froze in complete surprise. I instinctively tried to sit up, but she held on to my arm. "I'm going to die soon, so stay here with me for a while." I couldn't help complaining. I've never met anyone who makes this many requests before dying. She smiled proudly. "That's because I'm different." Then she added in a calm voice, "I'm a living dead woman who's carried 100 years of resentment." Somehow, she sounded almost proud of it. Letting out a quiet sigh, I stayed beside her. I had spent 100 years trying to avoid unnecessary trouble, yet somehow this one doctor had dragged me into risking everything. Jiang Ling gently wrapped her fingers around my wrist. Feeling awkward, I slightly turned away and muttered, "Don't take advantage of me." The only response I received was her soft, amused laugh.
Jiang Ling quietly swallowed the medicine with a glass of water before closing her eyes, fully accepting the fate she had chosen. Watching her peaceful face, I felt a strange ache in the empty place where my heart should have been. Unable to resist, I leaned down and gently kissed her lips, whispering that if Su Huan survived, they could never become ghost couple, so I would fulfill her wish instead. But to my horror, Jiang Ling suddenly opened her eyes and caught me red-handed. She calmly admitted she had taken fast-acting medicine instead of sleeping pills and teased me for secretly taking advantage of her. Flustered, I insisted I was only returning the kiss she had stolen from me first, but she simply smiled and held my hand tighter. After her death, her final wish was fulfilled as her heart was transplanted into Su Huan's body. Standing outside the operating room as ghosts, we silently watched her heart begin beating inside him, while she became the final soul I would ever guide. As I escorted Jiang Ling toward the gates of the underworld, A crushing pain suddenly exploded inside my chest. It wasn't imaginary anymore. It felt like a real heart was beating and breaking at the same time. Before I lost consciousness, Jiang Ling smiled gently and whispered just 4 words, "Live well, for me." The next moment, darkness swallowed everything. When I opened my eyes, I was lying in a hospital bed surrounded by monitors and the smell of disinfectant. Every part of my body ached, something a ghost should never be able to feel. A nurse assured me the surgery had been a complete success, but when I asked about Dr. Jiang Ling, everyone claimed no such doctor had ever existed. Then I looked at the name tag beside my bed and froze. It read, Su Huan. I had somehow returned to the world of the living, inside Su Huan's body. Over the next 2 months, I recovered at an unbelievable speed, without a single sign of transplant rejection. The hospital could only tell me that my heart had come from an anonymous charity donation, and no records of Jiang Ling could be found anywhere. The woman who had sacrificed everything to save me had vanished from history, leaving behind only one proof that she had ever existed, the heart still beating inside my chest.